Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you today. I want you to meet me over on Blue Sky, santitajackson.bsky.social, and Santita Jackson and Friends, my Facebook page, and the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. I want you to meet all of us over here and join us in conversation. Excuse me, as we break down really the big issues of the day. We're going to be talking about this, excuse me, this rising tide of anger that we've seen Republicans facing over the past few days. Well, face to face, because it's been rising. But as these Doge purges become real to a lot of people, and as threats to Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid become real to a lot of people, a lot of people are saying, this is not what I voted for. So let's talk about that. But as we begin the show, I want to dedicate the show to someone who really has my heart. You've heard me speak of Roberta Flack, and as I started a singing career, she was the person who mentored me. She is someone who I've known all of my life. She bought me a Steinway piano when I was 8. She felt that I had some music talent that she wanted to see nurtured. And as I grew and decided that I didn't think medicine was for me, I talked with her and she heard me sing and she said, I think this is for you. And I want you to do this. But I want you to have the love. And because she was someone who was brilliant musically and brilliant academically, she believed in education. She was, in fact, just a dissertation away, Mark Fancher, from her PhD. She had earned a full scholarship to Howard University at the age of 13. Brilliant, brilliant woman. Her parents relented and let her go at 15 because they said, okay, you're old enough now. But such was her genius. Up until U2 in 2001, she was the only, and she and U2 are the only artists in the history of the Grammys to have pop songs of the year in consecutive years. She was the first to have done that. And she held on to that distinction for more than 30 years. But she was just a wonderful, wonderful human being who gave Luther Vandross what he needed to be propelled into success. Many people don't know she allowed him to open her show. She took all of her star power, which was significant, and she took him to Ahmet Ertegun, who owned Atlantic Records. And she said, you need to get behind him. He did more than sing backup for her. And he didn't just fire her, she delivered him to his record company. And she did that for so many people. And I just love her dearly. And she made her transition early this morning. I got the call very, very early. And I've been kind of bumping into walls all day because I just can't imagine a world without her. And I thank God for her. So let us begin. Let me go on with the beginning of this amazing town hall. Representative Rich McCormick, who is a first-term congressman. I don't think he ever expected Attorney Mark Fancher to have to deal with this. Let me get this. There we go. Oh, wait a minute. I want to begin here. This wonderful start that I had.
Right? Job creators in the last 4 years has been government. Next to healthcare. Healthcare first, government second.
No. Here we go.
Not
the president. And you are doing us a disservice to set that down and not stand up for us.
Well, that was part of it. She did say that the president is not a king. We are dealing with a tyrant. We're looking at tyranny. And now, mind you, this woman, it is reported, is a descendant of one of the founding fathers, Patrick Henry. And it was interesting that she was using this revolutionary language, but these people are angry, upset, scared about Social Security cuts, Medicare, Medicaid cuts. They're losing their jobs. or people they know are losing their jobs. Attorney Mark Fancher, there is a lot going on here. Talk to me. What are you seeing?
Well, I think this is a situation not where the voters projected onto Donald Trump what they hoped he would be or what they hoped he would do, but they are responding to a real, honest to goodness betrayal. He, the constant refrain is, "Well, don't be surprised. He said he was going to do all of this." No, he didn't ever say he was going to do these things. What he told them, either explicitly or in code, is that what he was going to do was he was going to save America for white people. I
Hmm.
mean, that's the essence of it. That he was going to make sure that number one, that there would be no more people of color coming into this country, and that he would get rid of as many of them as he could through deportation. That he was going to make their lives more affordable by lowering gas prices and by lowering grocery prices and other things. That he was going to, as a consequence of minimizing the number of people of color in the country, open up new employment opportunities for people who were struggling and who were having difficulty in finding them. He was going to uh, essentially end overseas engagements, which are not popular among people because they think that's a waste of money and it places their young people in jeopardy. But he's gone contrary to that narrative. He has instead thrown lots of people out of work who never expected that they would be
Mhm.
thrown out of work. The prices continue to increase when they were certainly expecting that they were going to go down on day one, to quote President Trump. Um, he has broadened his vision of empire building and not only I mean, he has not pulled back from overseas engagement, but he has promised that what he's going to do is he's going to start working out real estate deals in Gaza and in Ukraine. He's going to rename the canal. He's going to do all these things overseas that nobody ever thought that he would do because he never said he was going to do them. So they're feeling very much betrayed and it's really sort of boiling over now in these town halls.
Where do you see this going? Because I think that you're right. There was a lot that went unsaid, right? There was a lot. The subtext was, we're going to make America great again. No, that was the text. The subtext was, for you. The problem was, what do they say, when you dig a ditch, when you dig a grave, you better dig two, one for me and one for you. And my mother always says, you cannot hurt me without hurting yourself. It was the oligarchs have gone wild. I mean, and they were doing this. This was part of the plan anyway. I keep trying to tell people, look, had Kamala Harris gotten in, I think she would not have wanted to do this. But the oligarchs contribute to both parties. It's what they do. I mean, and this is like a globalist plan. These people don't care about America or the borders of any one nation. They care about resources and enriching themselves. Help me, Mark.
Well, let me also say that I don't know that Trump was consciously lying during the campaign.
Hmm.
I think that he probably went in with the plan to do all of the things that he was saying that he was going to do. That basically make America white again. I mean, I think that was the bottom line. But the oligarchs, the billionaires, the corporate heads, and all of these people that really control the world, they're not stupid and they understand Trump. They understand what what value he brings to them if they're stuck with him because he was not their first choice. They did not want him. But since they got him, They knew exactly how to play him. And, I'm oversimplifying it, but basically his psychology is such that really all that they needed to do was to get in and to play on his insecurities about his IQ. And
You think that?
basically, um, in a combination of ways, either make him feel that in order for him to appear to be smart, that he has to say and do the things that people he believes to be smart are saying and doing, or for them to convince him that he came up with ideas that he didn't come up with, but that are really their ideas. And so he just fell right into that trap. And so, they have wanted to expand the global empire. That's not anything that ever occurred to Trump. That's not his part of his thinking or his worldview. But things like renaming the Gulf of the renaming the Panama Canal, uh, the oligarchs are not happy about the fact that China has as much influence in that region as it does.
Mhm.
And to the extent that the US can sort of reestablish that as its turf, can kind of mark that as theirs, then they're happy with that. Um, Greenland offers all kinds of strategic opportunities. Greenland, what would Trump be doing thinking of Greenland? But they got him in a gathering, probably it was a cocktail party, where they planned all of this, where all of the smart people are saying, the thing to do is to get Greenland. That would be the most strategically smart and intelligent thing for the US to do. And Trump is listening to that. And then he wants to be smart too. So he goes and says, I want Greenland. Why do you want Greenland? I don't know. But we want Greenland. And the oligarchs are thinking, yeah, that's great because then that puts us in a good position to keep an eye on Russia. It puts us in a great position to do all kinds of things that will help us to secure resources in that region. It's great. And it was never within the wildest dreams of the oligarchs that they would be able to go into Gaza and really finish that off, commit full scale genocide as quickly and as dramatically as Trump said that he wants to do it. Because world opinion had shifted to the point where they were getting serious pushback there. And they were going to have to be clever and think strategically about how to do that if Kamala Harris had won. But with Trump, this guy's an idiot anyway, and we can have him say whatever we want him to say. And Netanyahu's, he's down for anything if it means getting rid of some Palestinians. And so they come out with all this stuff. And this is not, and we haven't even begun to talk about what they're doing with deconstructing the federal government and giving Elon Musk opportunities to go in and to get into the most private records of his corporate competitors and others. I mean, this Trump has been invaluable to the oligarchs. I mean, he's there to do anything that they want him to do, and he is an unwitting dupe in many ways, and he's just going along and doing things that he's been told to do or that he's somehow been persuaded that are things that he came up with, and they're just rolling right along. The end result of all of this is going to be chaos and catastrophe, and it's just real people who are going to suffer because of it. The oligarchs are going to be sitting pretty. They will get everything that they want, and they'll just keep rolling right along.
Well, but now the Republicans are getting rolled at home. I mean, that I was just, that clip didn't do the the ferocity and the velocity of the attacks upon this Congressman McCormick, who's a first termer. It's a district that went double digits for Donald Trump, and it was gerrymandered to make the district even safer for a Congressman McCormick. And these people are furious. And it was standing room only, and people were lined up, they said, down the block, according to press reports. Um, Congressman Jonathan Jackson, my brother, had a town hall meeting virtual that he organized in a couple of days. 15,000 plus people were there. One woman said, "Hey, I have, I just lost my job, and my three children were just fired this week." I mean, the hits just keep on coming. But I
Yeah,
mean, but this was it. Congressman McCormick's district. It's affluent. It's white, and they never expected this to happen.
see, that's the beauty of this whole thing and the brilliance of it from the standpoint of the billionaires and the others is that they can go in and wreak total havoc. But the US public is so uninformed and so misinformed that they don't even realize who's doing this to them. The oligarchs don't care about the Republican Party. I mean, it's just there to serve their interests and to be the straw man. So that when people get all upset and they're ready to storm the gates and they're ready to burn things and they're ready to impose their will through mass force, uh, they're not going to even look at the billionaires. They're not going to look at Musk and Bezos and all of these people. They're not even looking at them. They're looking at the Republican Party. And if the billionaires are anywhere in the vicinity when the mob is approaching, the billionaires will say, "The Republicans are over here. Come on, let me show you where they are."
And they
So
hate you.
yeah, go get them.
And they hate you.
Yeah, and they'll be relaxing on their yachts in Bimini or someplace else, far away from all of the rage of the masses. And it's a brilliant setup. I mean, you got to give them credit for how clever they've been in terms of how they continue to advance their interests. Um,
Well, I mean, just before you go, where do you see this going?
well, as I said, I think and I've been saying it even before Trump. The U.S. was headed for uh, collapse of the empire for a while now,
Mhm.
and we're just watching the collapse of an empire. All empires collapse. People don't like. I mean, people call me Debbie Downer, but I just report facts. And every empire that's existed in history has reached a point where it has overplayed its hand. It spread its tentacles too far. It has not taken care of the people who are at home and the people who are really its mainstay, its source of support. And things just fall apart. And I think that that's where we're headed. We're headed for a collapse. And I honestly think that I don't worry about it. I mean, it's really God at work. I mean, this is the empire being held to account, and it's not just the oligarchs who are going to ultimately be held accountable for this because it's going to catch up to them too. But it's the many people who made it happen. I mean, Trump didn't just arrive in the White House because he chose to go there. There are many, many, many people who voted him in. And it's not that they were totally duped or that they were totally ignorant. Their reasons for voting him in
Mhm.
were nefarious and hateful. They hate people of color, and they wanted somebody who was going to champion their interests. They don't consciously hate people of color, but out of self-interest and out of greed, then these people were in the way and they were threatening to overtake their position in this country and they needed to be dealt with. So immigration was the top issue. Get rid of these people, stop them from coming in, and get rid of all of these other brown people and black people who are here who are crowding us out. Get rid of them. That's the main thing. And you can do that other presidential stuff like take care of the economy too, to make life easier for us. Those are people that I think God wants to hold to account as well. And so, given that it's in His hands, I don't worry about it. I'm just watching Him do His work. And for those of us who are interested in participating, I think that we need to begin thinking quite seriously about what has always been a necessity, and that is for people who are oppressed, communities that are oppressed, they need to figure out who it is that they're really in alliance with. They're not in alliance with all of these people who are hateful enough to have tried to drive them out of the country, but they are in alliance with oppressed communities around the world that are suffering at the hands of the same forces that are causing them to suffer. They're in alliance, whether they know it or not, with the people of Gaza. They're in alliance with the people of Cuba and Venezuela. They're in alliance with the people of the Congo. They're in alliance with the people throughout the global South who have also been victims of this very same empire. And we need to figure out how to come into relationship with them so that we can build our communities, sharing our resources, sharing our expertise, and crafting a way forward.
Well, I tell you, I just think that there is a lot going on here. I think that people approach Donald Trump, though. I think some of it's white supremacy, some of it isn't. I mean, some people are so frustrated with the system. They wanted someone who they felt was going to go on and storm the gates and change everything. But my mother always says, "Be careful what you pray for. You just might get it." You have to be very, very specific in your prayers and intentional. And more than that, you have to have the best and highest intentions of everyone in your heart. It needs to be clean. And there is just a lot. Yeah, I hear you, Lisa. God will hold people to account. I mean, because this is not right. But we're seeing a lot unfold right now. And I think that we'd be wise, we'd be unwise if we ignored the signs, because
Yeah.
this woman was talking about tyranny.
Yeah.
She was speaking American Revolution talk. And the civil rights movement was a revolution. Make no mistake about it. That having been said, it was bloodless for the most part. Those who were sacrificed, those who were martyred were the marchers. The American Revolution was a very different proposition. And we need to be very, very careful, because I think that we are on the verge of that, because the American dream is a nightmare for so many people, and it's not right.
Well, here's where I see the similarities between what's happening now and the American Revolution.
Hmm.
People presumably came over from England because they felt that they were getting a raw deal.
Yes.
They didn't like a monarchy. They didn't want a king. They wanted democracy and they wanted to be treated fairly. But what they did is that they came over here with a mindset and a culture and an orientation that allowed them, in spite of their stated desires, to come over here and steal territory from civilizations that were here, to engage in a long term process of genocide, to enshrine in the Constitution indicators of the inferiority of people of color, to enslave people and to hold them that way for an extended period of time. So they did not come over with a genuine sense of what it means to be part of the human family.
Mm-mm.
And so they built something that was corrupt. Now you've got people who are crying and complaining about the democracy being stolen, but they still have not learned what it means to be truly democratic and to be truly a part of the human family. They
Mhm.
don't have what it takes in order to construct that because they just voted in a man with the mindset that he was going to be selective about who benefited from his presidency. They did not contemplate immigrants and other communities of color being a part of that vision. And so, in the absence of them having that mentality, they're incapable of building what they say they want to build because they're spiritually dead. They have no real sense and understanding of what being a member of the human family is all about. And I'll say this as a final thought that ultimately, even people who thought that Trump was going to just come in and to shake things up, it still all boils down to race. And I say that even not with respect to just the white voters, but with respect to the many Latinos who voted for Trump
Mhm.
and with respect to Black voters who voted for Trump. Because what they did is they, on some level, whether it was conscious or intuitive, they understood that not everybody who is currently regarded as white was always regarded as white. That there were later immigrants. First it was just the Anglo-Saxons who were regarded as white in this country, and so the Poles, the Italians, Jews, and other ethnics from Europe were not regarded as white, but they were given white privilege over time when it became necessary and advantageous for the white community to have them as part of that group. And so you have people of color now who don't want to be biologically white. They don't want to even be culturally white, but they do want white privilege. And so their support for Trump in many ways was a reflection of their belief, a misguided belief, that they could get on board with the winning team, that if they supported Trump, that somehow they would be welcomed into the circle of those who get the privileges that
Mhm.
come with being white. And so they're learning some things too. But that desire, that interest in being part of a privileged group is a very negative one. It's a very destructive one. It's a very divisive one. And until people of this country purge themselves of those impulses, it really has no hope for salvaging what I think they hope that they can save.
Yes, because everybody remember racism is a form of classism, and we racialize classism in America, which is why it always comes down to race. And but that's why we have, when you go to Northern Ireland, we have solidarity with them, and they have solidarity with us. When they come over here, it changes, because who wants to be at the bottom? But those who are in Northern Ireland, they get it. They get it. Sending so much love and many blessings to you, Attorney Mark Fancher. Brilliant, brilliant
Thank you.
analysis as always. But you know what? I've got this gentleman coming up. I'm so excited. He is from In These Times magazine. Indeed, I am so happy to have JP.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
J. Patrick Patterson. I'm so glad that you are here. You and I are both wrapped up. I ran in. I've had one of these crazy, crazy days, but you're their associate editor. I'm so excited for you. And Ari Bloomcats, who is my beloved.
He's great. Yeah.
Yeah, he just said, "Oh, you got to get this guy on." But one of the things that I love about your analyses, because you're a brilliant writer and thinker, and you talk about the social, the cultural, the economic, all of it, and the political, and that's very important because we braid all of those pieces together here. We've been looking at the the Congressman McCormick town hall, but it's happening with a lot of town halls of a lot of. It is surprising the legacy media, GOP congresspersons are going home because senators tend not to have these town hall meetings, but they're going home to a fusillade of attack. People are so angry. They said, I did not sign up for this. This woman in Georgia, who is a descendant of Patrick Henry, yes, well, that Patrick Henry, one of the founding fathers, talked about tyranny. She said, this is not a king. Wait, I said, wait a minute. We're going backwards. We're about to turn 250 years old. She went back to that. And I thought that was very interesting. I mean, and just if you look at the zeitgeist, everybody's angry. We now have one of the most progressive mayors elected in American history who is looking at 80% disapproval because he's tried to handle the migrants in a humane way. But, they put the migrants, and oligarchs always do this to keep us at each other's throats. They put them in a neighborhood that has a life expectancy 30 years fewer than the most affluent white community in the United States. In Inglewood, you are lucky, and you're a unicorn if you get to 60. Okay? That's where they put the migrants. They didn't put them in a wealthy area. Oh no. And in the United States, we do have more vacant units of housing than we have homeless people. So these issues are manufactured. So let me just start with you, JP. J. Patrick Patterson, of course, associate editor at In These Times magazine. I want you all to support it because they support us. What do you make of these town hall meetings? They are so vitriolic. Are you surprised by that?
I'm not surprised. I think a lot of people are hurting. I think it's clear that, you know, I think it's clear that there's widespread discontent with a lot of the slashing and burning of federal programs and firing of federal workers. And I think we're seeing that because these federal workers and these programs are they primarily benefit working people, like working everyday people, right? So for me, you know, I don't think it's dramatic to call what's happening a coup.
Why?
Because I think what we're seeing is we're seeing Donald Trump choosing an unelected billionaire, Elon Musk, the richest person in the world, to lead the Department of Government Efficiency, try to get access to sensitive data. He's tried to get access to data about workers. The courts have like tried to pause it, but like these attempts are going to still keep happening. And this person who is unelected is helping do like an all-out assault on the federal government, which is a huge workforce, right? Like the federal, if I'm someone who wants to attack workers and attack the public programs, I would go after the federal workforce. It's around 30% of the federal workforce is in a union. Public sector union membership rates, the rate is 5 times higher than that of the private sector. So if I, you know, want a country where unions are crushed by the interests of the business class, I would go after the federal workforce, and that's exactly what's happening. And it's not just folks in DC. More than 80% of that workforce lives outside of DC in areas all across the country.
Yeah. And people don't know. I mean, I think maybe this just settled in, JP. Of course, we're talking to J. Patrick Patterson, associate editor of In These Times magazine. Brilliant magazine. They really do focus on the needs and aspirations of the of the working class, of the poor. All of our media focuses on middle class people, and increasingly we don't have that in the United States. Um, they focus they focus on our aspirations, not on where we're really living. But that is what In These Times magazine does, and I want you to go on and support them. Support them because they support us. What was missed here? Because it's almost as if, my brother Congressman Jonathan Jackson, he predicted this. He said, "Oh, just wait till this stuff settles in on people." He said, "You are going to see anger." He said, "And is you going to see it everywhere." He didn't. I mean, and I hope the Democrats aren't missing this, because it's not that uh, they have been that they are immune to the criticism, because they don't have an answer. They're not, and just telling me that we got to hate Trump, that's not going to work. Elections have consequences. That's not going to work either, because Biden could have dropped out 2 years before. He refused to do that. And he'd been asked to do that. And many mainstream Democrats refused. It was blasphemy when Roots Action said, "Hey, do that. You said you were going to be a transitional president, which meant you were going to be in for 4 years. Ease out now. Don't resign, but give other people. Let us have a primary." The Democrats eliminated the primary.
Mm-hmm.
And then they gave this woman 107 days to make a miracle, which, by the way, she almost did. I mean, it's not even 2 percentage points, not even that separate in terms of the popular vote, Kamala Harris and the president. So, but then there were some things that, that I wish she had done differently, because I think they might have made a difference. I don't know. I'm not blaming her for anything, because look, she just did what she could with what she had. And I respect that. That having been said, I need to. What do you see? He said that this was, and he even said when I spoke with him this morning, he said, "Oh, we're at the beginning of the bad part." He said, "You wait until these cuts really take root," which is what you were talking about. Because many of us only look at Washington, Virginia, Maryland. Do you think we really understand what the federal government does and where federal government workers are?
Hmm. Yeah, I think there are definitely some misconceptions about the federal government. But I think, I see what's happening right now as an opportunity to bridge that information gap, right? Because people are paying attention to what's happening with these federal cuts, people will also be paying attention to attempts by federal workers and their unions to educate the populace about the work that they do. The fact of the matter is that a third of them are in unions. They are all across the country, and they're not all like these rich, wealthy bureaucrats who are just like making a ton of money while being lazy. I think there's these like stereotypes that we have about federal workers getting rich off of the public's expense. But if you look at the data, almost 60% of them make less than $110,000 a year. Around 40% make less than 90K a year. So we're not talking about exorbitant salaries, certainly like nothing close to what Elon Musk makes. And the work that they do provides crucial social safety net benefits to working people. We're talking about Social Security. We're talking about Medicare. We're talking about Medicaid. We're talking about workplace safety protections. We're even talking about consumer protections. So I think this is an opportunity to work together with labor, with these federal workers, to bring more education to what it is that they do, how crucial their work is, and what we're up against.
So, how do you think that Republicans are going to handle this? Because they're getting pressure from the top of the party, right, from the president himself. But now they are going home. I mean, they're getting squeezed on every conceivable side. What do you think? How do you think they're going to respond?
It's a good question. I think how they respond depends on what we continue to do, right? Like, so people have taken to the streets. People have been protesting the slashing of these federal programs and federal workforces. We've seen unions file a bunch of lawsuits. We've seen the courts put a pause on some of the things that Musk and Trump have tried to do. But we can't rely on the courts or like sporadic protests alone. These lawsuits take time, and while these cases are making their way through the courts and while these things are on pause, Musk and Trump are continuing this fast, brazen assault on the federal government, federal programs, and effectively workers. So I like what Luis Feliz Leon said in a recent in these Times column. He said it's time for the labor movement to lead in building a majority bloc of the working class against billionaire rule. So I think it's an important question to ask what Republicans want to do, but I also think we should be asking, what are we going to do? We need popular, widespread backlash against what's happening. We need to put the working class at the forefront of this fight, and we need to refuse to continue creating a country where the interests of the billionaire class are put above the interests of working people, and that will include continuing to run progressive candidates. That will include continuing to try to beat the Republican Party, which unfortunately Democrats have demonstrated a weak ability to do overall. So it's up to everyday people to keep pushing.
So, what do you think? So, what are the unions going to do? Of course, their numbers are beginning to tick up once again, but they're not where they were, please, when I was a child, which is way before you were born, actually. But so, what are they going to do? We've seen The United Auto Workers have some success. We've seen some success over at Amazon. I mean, you see more people, I think, beginning to move, because unions got a bad rap for a long time, but then unions also, unfortunately, got too cozy with ownership. So, they had gone against their base too. It can happen. But so what are unions? What is the labor movement and the leadership? What are they doing right now in this moment? Because now, because I see them beginning to sue or or look at lawsuits on behalf of these government workers. I mean, what? I mean, what's next for the union movement?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like we've seen unions filing complaints. We've seen unions having rallies. We've seen them filing lawsuits. I think what we'll see, hopefully, what we'll see is those things to continue. I think those are like important things to be doing to start to stop some of or at least slow down some of the bleeding, right? But we definitely need like a broad, bold approach. And I think part of that is going to be continuing to try to get more people in the unions. And, there are more people eligible to be in these public sector unions than are in them. So trying to like grow membership, which, I know is not an easy task, but is one that could play an important role. And I think it's going to be, continuing to like build up the capacity for unions to like use their resources and their ability to wield power in certain policy arenas to push for changes that actually benefit the common good. So I think the public sector can play an incredible role when it comes to that. And we'll see.
Well, having said that, I mean, do you think it's the zeitgeist, the spirit of the times? I mean, because we're in Chicago, and of course, this is one of the big three cities in the country, and it's been the focus in particular of the president and the migrant crisis. And indeed, Governor Abbott purposefully sent migrants to Chicago. Now, I've always thought that was part of the conceit, right? Um, if they really wanted to keep the migrants out, he's at the border. He would have sent them right back across the border. But this is someone who's not a disconnected guy. He's from the World Economic Forum, and I look at the tent partnership for refugees signed by Anthony Blinken, who was our Secretary of State at the time, paving the way for these refugees to come into the United States and work for cheap, right? So, I mean, talk to me. Now we're looking at a progressive mayor, Brandon Johnson, who's tried to handle this situation in a very humane way. He's got 80% disapproval. When he goes to the city council meeting, he sees a sea of red, MAGA. And now they're even talking about, oh my gosh, oh my stars, a Republican mayor in Chicago. That doesn't happen in Chicago. But everything's upside down. I mean, what do you make of what Mayor Johnson is having to deal with? I mean, it seems like it's similar.
I think there is a something similar about what happens in Chicago and what happens on the national level when it comes to demonizing certain groups. It's not just immigrants, but I think that's one that we see time and time again. I think it's going after immigrants, threatening increased ICE rates, things like that have been a big part of the right strategy. But it's also, demonizing LGBTQ folks, trans people, especially. It's been demonizing people of color, Haitians. I think the similarity is that, whether we're talking about Chicago or on a national level, it is a tactic of the right of the ruling class to create these divisions between us based off of various identities and backgrounds, so that they can continue to keep us divided, even though if we were to come together, we actually have a lot of common interests.
Mhm.
that we could work together to fight against them, and they know that, right? And so that's why I think that's a big part of why you're seeing that. And yeah, I saw the polling. I think right, 80% disapproval. I think
Yeah.
you know. I, I think the mayor may be in like a challenging position, but this also seems kind of in line with like a bigger political play by those with conservative and centrist interests, people who would like to see a Republican or someone more conservative be the mayor of Chicago. This most recent poll was commissioned by Juan Rangel, who's the CEO of the Urban Center, which is a centrist group. And I believe a similar poll was released like 3 weeks ago showing similar results. And that one was commissioned by the libertarian group Illinois Policy Institute. So, this is not like, I don't think it's disconnected from like some of the business interests that I've been talking about, that we've been talking about so far. I think we're still talking about groups of corporations, of members of the business class, of the real estate lobby, who want to stop progressives who are going to enact policies that benefit working people. And they are going to try to tell people that the solution is going to be to vote for a more conservative candidate or a Republican instead of someone liberal or someone like Brandon Johnson. And I think on the left, we have a responsibility to make sure that they are not able to spread that type of misinformation, because the fact of the matter is conservative politics, a Republican candidate, they're not actually going to make this city a better place for working people.
No, they're not, and that is not the plan. And yet Brandon Johnson is looking at a sea of red. And yet Republicans are now, I'm sure they are all now almost afraid to go home because at these town hall meetings, they're standing room only. And now Bernie Sanders, thankfully, is on a tour, and his tour is standing room only. People are down. It's like they're voting for him again. They're down the block, several blocks down, and the halls are full. The halls are filled. They're having to find bigger and bigger venues because I don't know. I think this has awakened something in America. It's shaken something loose. Do you agree? And if you do, what has become unmoored, or what has been unleashed? Maybe that's a better way to put it.
I think so. I think it's been encouraging to see protests. It's been encouraging to see unions fighting back. It's been encouraging to see people showing up at town halls, showing up to hear Bernie Sanders out against what's happening. I think we have a lot going for us on the left. I know it's like really difficult to be hopeful right now with everything going on. But I think I don't think all is lost yet, right? Like we still at the end of the day, like people. I think people do want to vote in their interests. It's just like, can we help people make the connection between their interests and the interests of people who are different from them? Can we tell a story that connects the struggles of working people of all different backgrounds, across racial lines, across immigration status? Can we keep telling that story so that we can keep progressive candidates in office and not continue to turn the tide into what's happening now?
Do you think, just moving forward, do you see people moving away from? I mean, I see a lot of disenchanted Republicans, and I see a lot of disenchanted Democrats. Do you see a burgeoning third party, or what does that portend in your mind?
Yeah, I certainly, I think on the left there's a lot of enthusiasm for another option, right? we do live in a country where there's a two-party system, and that, forces us to vote for one of the two major parties, neither of which I think are protecting and fighting for working people. I think if we're talking long term on the horizon, building a party that actually is willing to fight for working people is something that would do a lot of good. But I think we have to be honest about the institutional and political constraints that we're under right now. And unfortunately, we live in a country where you have to so-called vote for the lesser evil.
This one or that one.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. I mean, but I think that you're right. I mean, and I think we do have to look at the fact that at this time, until we decide to make a massive, massive, massive move, you do have institutional restraints. And quite frankly, uh, my father often says that, we often say, Pharaoh, let my people go. He said, no, people, you got to let Pharaoh go. So I think that the tough part, it made me crack up at the time. I was a little girl. I said, but it made sense to me because that is a real challenge. I think, as your closing thought, because I see Americans moving. I just want us to make moves that make some sense. I see an opportunity for the so-called right and the so-called left to come together and to say, hey, wait a minute, we have a lot in common here. Because if you want to be honest about it, J. Patrick Patterson, associate editor at In These Times magazine, philosophically, people tend to be more of a mix. People not straight up anything. They kind of, we really do mix things up. We really, really do. So you tell me your closing thoughts. I mean, because this every day, I've got whiplash. JP, my son, I've got whiplash. He's not my child. Everybody, don't start any rumors. He's young enough to be. Okay. I'm like, wait a minute. Well, let me not. You could be, but no.
Are you looking to adopt?
Okay. Woo! I could do that, but I just want them to know. Okay. But but you tell me. I mean, what do you see? Because you see a world that you know getting a black person to be seriously considered for the presidency and to be winning primaries and quite frankly to reshape American and global politics as Reverend Jackson did. You're living after that. You're living with the fruits of that, and you're not satisfied with everything you have. No one said that the fight was going to be over. Because he was a populist. He was a progressive. What we got was not. So you tell me in the last minute, you've got it. What do you see? Where do you see us going? Where do you think we need to go, and how can we get there? Gave you a whole lot. You got it.
I think we got to keep the momentum. Like I said before, I think it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel right now.
Mhm.
It's hard to stay hopeful, and I certainly understand why that is. It is people are hurting. People are they're going after our neighbors. They're going
Mhm.
after our family members. I think I would encourage people to get organized. Join organizations that are doing work that you care about. See if there's something small that you can do in your community that makes a difference. I think once people are in motion, we'll continue to have the strength to build more momentum. I think continuing to organize more federal workers into public sector workers into unions, focusing on labor organizing as a whole. I think all of these are part of the puzzle. The right has a multi-pronged attack happening right now, and so we'll need a multi-pronged solution. But key to it all is bringing people together, like I said, from across all different backgrounds, but who have similar interests. And I do believe we have a lot of common interests, even though we are, there's a lot of different people in this country. I believe that there are progressive policies that benefit the working class as a whole, and we have to just like keep getting that message out there, figure out what people really need in this moment. Part of it is like, I think we should be looking forward for how to like build the type of movements that I'm talking about. But a lot of it is also, I want to just like recognize that a lot of what needs to happen right now is just protecting people, right? Like damage control. People are under attack. Immigrants, trans folks. A lot of it is just like protecting each other, taking care of our neighbors, taking care of ourselves. So those are my thoughts.
Well, those are big thoughts, and that's a big task because people are under attack, and we must protect each other. We must, but we have to understand that we all have an interest in protecting each other.
There you go.
Because one day it will be you, my friend. You
There you
just keep on living. These folks at these town hall meetings never ever thought that it would be them, and it didn't take long.
Absolutely.
Didn't take long. I don't feel, Schadenfreude is not my thing. I do not glory in anyone's pain. This is a lot, but maybe this is what we need to begin to see each other. I saw something this morning just very quickly where they were talking about on C-SPAN on Washington Journal. They were looking at welfare fraud. I said, okay, but the Pentagon has failed its audit 7 consecutive years.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about fraud and abuse? Why don't you start there? They have the biggest budget of anybody. Most of our nation's money goes to them. Why aren't you concerned about that? You want to pick on some poor people? What? Nah,
That's
no.
right. Yeah, the enemy is the billionaire class, not your fellow workers, not immigrants, not trans people, not the poor.
And people, and thinking that it is somebody else, thinking that they're the problem. No, these people you don't want to fight. They're the problem, and you need to take. Lobbyists are not your issue. Lobbyists are hired guns. Who's hiring them? Yeah, deal with that. So, JP, J. Patrick Patterson, I cannot wait to see. He's going to be a regular on the show. We're going to be going through all of these issues and more. Can't wait to have you on.
All right,
I'm
this is fun. Thank you.
Glad we were able to debut today. Hey.
Thank you.
In These Times Magazine, everybody. Let's talk about this in the second hour. What are your thoughts, everybody? What are your thoughts? Think about how these workers are being treated. They are being intimidated. It's a hostile work environment. They're being told, you better go on and take this buyout or else. What do you think about that? Get on over to the second hour of the Santita Jackson Show. Let's talk about it. Back in just a minute.